Don't open that door. You'll die." The little girl's voice trembled so soft it was almost carried away by the wind, but it was enough to make the most powerful man in this place stop mid-step. He had never stopped for anyone, especially not for a ragged child clutching a basket of flowers, her eyes wet with fear. Everyone around them thought she was just a poor kid causing trouble, until she grabbed his sleeve, something she had never dared to do to someone like him. There was no begging in her eyes, no asking for money. Only one thing, fear so deep it hurt to look at. And then, he turned back to face her. Just a moment. But that moment changed everything, because if what the child said was true then, in just a few minutes, one of them would never get the chance to say another word again. But the question is, why was an invisible little girl on the street the only one who knew? If this story touched your heart, take a moment to reflect on the quiet power of kindness, especially when no one else chooses to show it. Share your thoughts in the comments, and tell us where you're watching from. Which city and country are you in? And what time is it there right now? It's always amazing to see how stories like this connect people from all over the world. If moments like this remind you of the beauty of humanity, please like the video and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss more powerful stories that celebrate compassion, courage, and the simple acts of kindness that can change life. October 2025, Chicago's South Side carried the sharp bite of early autumn. The wind sliced between the low brick tenements and the skeletal frames of half-abandoned factories, rattling the chain-link fences and scattering dry leaves across cracked sidewalks. Streetlights flickered on one by one, as dusk settled their pale orange glow, barely touching the deeper shadows where people moved like ghosts. Lily Harper stood on the corner of 39th and Halstead, small bare knees pressed together against the cold. She was 9 years old, thin as a reed, her dark hair tied back with a frayed rubber band that had once been bright pink. Her coat, once navy blue, now faded to a dull gray and patched at both elbows, barely reached her wrists. Beneath it, she wore the same long-sleeve shirt she had slept in for 3 nights running. The fabric smelled faintly of mildew and the cheap laundry detergent her Aunt Sarah could afford only in the smallest box. In front of her stood a warped card table borrowed from the church basement. On the table sat a chipped plastic pitcher of lemonade she and Mia had mixed that morning with 2 packets of off-brand powder and tap water, plus a stack of paper cups and a plate of sugar cookies baked the night before in Sarah's ancient oven. The cookies were slightly burned at the edges, but they were all the girls had left after giving 2 to the landlord's son in exchange for another week before the eviction notice turned into a lock change. Lily cupped her hands around her mouth and called out in the soft, polite voice she had learned to use with grown-ups. "Fresh lemonade, 50 cents. Homemade cookies, 2 for $1. Please, ma'am, sir." Most people hurried past without looking. A few slowed, glanced at her hollow cheeks and the way her shoulders hunched against the wind, then kept walking. One man in a good wool coat tossed a crumpled dollar onto the table without stopping. Lily whispered, "Thank you," even though he was already gone. Beside her, Mia shifted from foot to foot. Mia was also 9, a shade taller skin, the color of strong coffee hair, braided into tight cornrows that Sarah had done last Sunday. Mia's sneakers had holes in both toes. She had stuffed the gaps with folded newspaper. She hated begging almost as much as she hated the cold, but she hated being hungry more. "They're not going to buy today," Mia muttered, arms crossed tight across her chest. "Wind's too mean. They just want to get inside." Lily didn't answer right away. She watched a sleek black Escalade glide past windows tinted so dark they looked like sheets of obsidian. The vehicle slowed for a moment at the traffic light, then turned left onto Halstead toward the block where Rossi Sanitation's headquarters squatted like a fortress among smaller warehouses. Everyone on the south side knew the building. 4 stories of red brick, barred windows on the lower floors, a discreet brass sign beside the double doors that read simply, "Rossi Enterprises, established 1987. No one ever said the other name aloud, Vinnie Rossi, but everyone knew who owned the trucks that rolled through at 3 in the morning and who made sure the city contracts never went to anyone else. Lily had seen him twice. The first time had been last spring. Mr. Rossi had stepped out of that same black Escalade wearing a charcoal overcoat that looked softer than anything Lily had ever touched. He was tall, fair-skinned, perhaps in his late 40s, with short, silver-streaked hair and eyes the color of winter lake water, pale, cold, unreadable. He had walked straight past the card table without a glance, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and clipped. Lily remembered the scent of his cologne lingering in the air after he passed expensive, clean, nothing like the diesel and wet concrete smell that clung to everything else on the block. The second time had been 3 weeks ago. Rain had soaked through Lily's coat and turned the cookies to mush. Mr. Rossi had emerged again, this time without the overcoat sleeves of his white dress shirt rolled precisely to the elbows. He had paused only for 2 heartbeats, long enough for Lily to lift a soggy cookie on a napkin and say, "Please, sir, they're still good." He had looked down at her, then really looked, and something flickered behind those pale eyes, not pity, not kindness, but a brief, almost imperceptible flinch, as though the sight of her had touched an old bruise he had forgotten was there. Then he had shaken his head once, almost imperceptibly, and continued to the car. Now the Escalade was back. It rolled to a smooth stop directly in front of the headquarters entrance. The rear door opened before the vehicle had fully settled. Vinnie Rossi stepped out. He moved with the economical grace of a man who had never once been uncertain of his place in the world. Dark tailored suit, crisp white shirt, burgundy tie knotted with surgical precision. A heavy gold watch caught the streetlight as he lifted his phone again. His driver, broad-shouldered, silent, closed the door behind him with a soft, expensive click. Inside Vinnie's chest, something tightened. He had felt it for weeks now, this quiet gnawing that arrived without invitation and refused to leave. Guilt was too simple a word. Remorse came closer, but even that felt inadequate. He had spent 2 decades building walls, money, power, silence, until the walls became the only thing he trusted. Yet every time he passed this corner, every time he saw the 2 small girls with their pathetic table, the walls cracked just a fraction wider. He told himself it was nothing. Street kids were everywhere. Chicago was full of them. But these 2 stayed. Day after day. Thin faces, polite voices, eyes too old for 9-year-old bodies. And every time he looked away, the crack widened. Tonight the feeling was sharper. Perhaps it was the wind cutting through his coat, or the way the smaller girl, Lily, shivered so violently she almost dropped the pitcher. Perhaps it was the memory of his own childhood in a colder apartment 2 miles north. A mother who worked double shifts, and still couldn't keep the heat on a father who disappeared when Vinnie was 11. He had clawed his way out of that life. He had sworn he would never look back. Yet here he was, looking. Across the street, a group of 4 young men in dark hoodies drifted closer to the corner. They moved with the loose, predatory confidence of people who answered to someone else, someone who had been trying for months now to chip away at Rossi territory. Vinnie's driver noticed them too. His hand drifted toward the concealed holster beneath his jacket. Vinnie raised a single finger. The driver stilled. Not here, not now, not in front of children. Lily saw the men approaching. Her stomach twisted into a cold knot. She knew their faces, low-level runners for the West Side crew that had been pushing closer to Halsted every month. Last week they had smashed the windshield of one of Rossi's smaller trucks 2 blocks away. The week before that they had spray-painted threats across the side of a dumpster behind the headquarters. Mia grabbed Lily's wrist. "We should go." Lily shook her head. "We only made $7 today. Sarah needs the rent money by Friday." The men stopped at the edge of the sidewalk. One of them, a tall boy, no older than 19, kicked the leg of the card table. The pitcher wobbled. Lemonade sloshed over the rim and dripped onto the concrete. "Nice setup," he said, voice lazy. "But this corner ain't free." Lily's heart hammered so hard she felt dizzy. She kept her eyes on the table, voice barely above a whisper. "We're just selling lemonade, sir. We'll be gone soon." The tall one laughed. His friends stepped closer. Across the street, Vinnie's jaw tightened. The old familiar rage rose in his throat, cold, controlled, lethal. He had spent years teaching himself to feel nothing. Tonight, the lesson failed. He crossed the street in 6 long strides. The young men saw him coming. Their postures changed, shoulders squaring, hands sliding toward pockets. Vinnie stopped 3 feet away, hands loose at his sides. "Walk away," he said quietly. The tall one sneered. "This ain't your block no more, old man." Vinnie did not raise his voice. "He did not need to. I said walk." For a long moment no one moved. Wind moaned between the buildings. Then the tall one spat on the ground and jerked his head. The group melted back into the shadows, disappearing around the corner. Vinnie turned. Lily and Mia stared up at him, frozen. Lily's lips trembled. She tried to speak, couldn't. Her knees felt like water. Vinnie looked down at the spilled lemonade pooling around their shoes, at the burned cookies, at the way Lily's fingers shook as she tried to mop up the mess with the sleeve of her coat. Something inside him tore quietly, violently, irreparably. He crouched, bringing his eyes level with hers. "What's your name?" His voice was softer than he intended. Lily swallowed. "Lily, sir." "And your friend Mia," Mia answered, chin lifted, even though her voice cracked. Vinnie nodded once. He reached into his coat pocket, withdrew a slim leather wallet, and placed 3 crisp $100 bills on the table, more money than Lily had seen in her entire life. "Take it," he said. "Go home. It's cold." Lily stared at the money. Tears welled, hot and sudden. She shook her head. "We can't. We didn't earn. You earned it standing here in the wind all afternoon," he said. "Take it." Slowly, fingers trembling, Lily picked up the bills. She folded them carefully as though they might disappear if she moved too fast. Vinny stood. For one heartbeat, he hesitated long enough for the old walls to try to rebuild themselves. Then he turned and walked back toward the escalade. Behind him, Lily whispered, "Thank you, sir." He did not answer. He could not. The crack in his chest had become a chasm, and through it poured everything he had spent 20 years burying: guilt, remorse, the memory of a small boy who once stood on a different corner hoping someone would notice. As the escalade pulled away, Lily clutched the money to her chest and began to cry quiet, exhausted sobs that shook her whole body. Mia put an arm around her. Neither girl spoke. They did not know, could not know, that the man who had just crossed the street had in that single moment of kneeling already begun to change the trajectory of both their lives, and that the change would be as fierce, as painful, and as redemptive as anything either of them would ever experience. The next afternoon, October 2025, the sky over the south side hung low and slate-gray, threatening rain that never quite fell. The wind had not relented. If anything, it had grown teeth overnight, clawing at coat collars and rattling loose window panes in the row houses that lined 39th Street. Lily Harper woke before dawn on the thin mattress she shared with her Aunt Sarah in the single room they rented above the laundromat. The radiator hissed, once coughed, and went silent. No heat again. Sarah had already left for her 6 to 2 shift at the hospital cafeteria, leaving a note taped to the chipped formica table. "Eat the last oatmeal packet. Love you, baby girl. Lock the door." Lily dressed in the dark, same jeans, same long-sleeved shirt, same patched coat. She slipped the family locket under her collar, so the metal would warm against her skin, then tucked the small, worn Bible into the pocket, where she kept the 3 $100 bills Mr. Rossi had given her yesterday. She had not spent a single one. The money felt too heavy, too unreal, like holding someone else's dream. She was afraid that if she broke one of the bills, the rest would vanish. Mia was waiting on the table when Lily stepped outside. The girls had agreed to meet at 6:30 sharp. Mia's eyes were red-rimmed. She had spent the night listening to her older brother argue with their mother about money they didn't have. Neither girl spoke of it. They simply picked up the card table from behind the laundromat, carried it to the corner, and set up as though nothing had changed. But everything had. The $300 sat like a secret between them. Lily had whispered the whole story to Mia last night in the hallway outside their doors, how Mr. Rossi had knelt, how his voice had softened, how he had looked at her as though seeing her for the first time. Mia had listened in silence, arms folded, then said, "Only rich men don't do nice things for free, Lil. Remember that." Now, as they arranged the fresh batch of cookies Sarah had baked before dawn, slightly less burned this time, Lily kept glancing toward the Rossi Enterprises building. The black Escalade was already parked in its usual spot. No sign of Mr. Rossi yet. At 3 minutes past 4 o'clock, 4 men in dark jackets drifted out of the alley beside the headquarters. They moved with the loose swagger Lily had learned to recognize, not quite running, not quite strolling, always watching corners and mirrors. She knew their faces now, the tall one from yesterday, plus 3 others. One carried a small canvas duffel bag slung over his shoulder. They stopped near the rear entrance of the building, out of sight from the main street, but visible from the card table if you knew where to look. Mia noticed first. They're back. Lily's stomach twisted into a cold fist. She pretended to rearrange the cups, while her eyes stayed locked on the men. The tall one unzipped the duffel and pulled out a small black box, no bigger than a lunchbox with wires trailing from one side. He handed it to another man who crouched beside the rear wheel of a silver SUV parked in the loading zone. The crouching man slid underneath the vehicle on his back, movements quick and practiced. Lily's breath caught. She recognized the shape of the thing they were handling. She had seen something like it once before on a grainy phone video her cousin had shown her last summer, bragging about how the big boys do it. A bomb. Small, remote, meant to explode when someone started the engine or opened a door. Her knees buckled. She grabbed the edge of the table to keep from falling. The world tilted. Colors bled at the edges. For a moment she felt nothing but a high-ringing numbness in her ears. Mia gripped her arm hard. "Lily, breathe." Lily forced air into her lungs. "They're putting it in a car. Mr. Rossi's car. I know it. He always leaves at 6. They're waiting for him." Mia's face went gray. "We can't know that. We shouldn't even be watching. But we do know." Lily's voice cracked, small and trembling. "We saw it. If we don't say anything..." Mia shook her head violently. "You think he'll believe 2 kids? After yesterday he gave us money so we'd go away, Lil? That's all." Lily stared at the men. The one under the SUV slid back out, gave a quick nod. The tall one zipped the duffel, patted the side of the vehicle, once almost affectionately, then all 4 melted back into the alley. Silence settled over the corner again, broken only by the wind and the distant rumble of a CTA bus. Inside Lily's chest, something tore slowly at first, then with brutal speed. She thought of Mr. Rossi's eyes yesterday, that single flicker of something human behind the ice. She thought of Sarah coming home tonight with tired feet and an empty lunch bag because she had given half her sandwich to a patient who looked hungrier than she was. She thought of the nights she and Mia had slept curled together under one blanket when the heat failed, whispering stories so they wouldn't hear the wind howling through the cracks. She could not let someone die, not when she had seen it coming. "I have to tell him," she whispered. Mia's fingers dug into Lily's arm. "No, you'll get us both hurt. Or worse. Those guys, they don't play. And Mr. Rossi, he's not some nice man in a suit. Everyone knows what he is." Lily looked at her best friend. Tears stood in Mia's eyes, but her jaw was set. "I know," Lily said softly. "But yesterday he stopped them from kicking our table. He gave us money we didn't earn. Maybe he's not all bad." Mia let go. "Maybe he is, and maybe you're gonna get us killed trying to find out." The girls stood in silence while the minutes crawled. At 5 minutes to 5 o'clock, the front doors of Rossi Enterprises opened. Vinny Rossi emerged. He wore the same charcoal overcoat, same measured stride. His driver waited by the Escalade, holding the rear door. Vinny paused on the top step, scanning the street with the automatic sweep of a man who had spent decades expecting trouble. His gaze passed over the corner, over the card table, over the 2 small girls without stopping, but Lily saw the instant his eyes flicked back. He saw her. For one heartbeat, their gazes locked across the 30 yards of cracked sidewalk. Vinny's expression did not change, yet something shifted in the set of his shoulders, a minute tightening as though an old wound had suddenly throbbed. Inside, Vinny, the chasm widened another inch. He had spent the night awake in the penthouse atop one of his downtown buildings, staring at the city lights, while the $300 he had given away replayed in his mind, like a film stuck on a single frame. The girl's hollow cheeks, the way her fingers shook when she took the money. The other one, Mia, watching him with open suspicion as though she already knew every lie he had ever told himself about why he did what he did. He had told himself it was charity. A moment of weakness, nothing more. Yet here he was, looking again. And now the girl was staring back, not with gratitude, not with fear, but with something urgent, almost desperate. Her small hand lifted, hesitated, then pointed once toward the silver SUV in the loading zone. Vinny's pulse kicked hard. He knew that vehicle. It was one of his backups kept ready in case the Escalade was ever compromised. He used it perhaps twice a month. Routine, predictable, dangerous. He lifted his chin a fraction. The driver caught the signal and stepped closer. Vinny walked down the steps, not toward the Escalade, but toward the corner. The wind whipped his coat open as he crossed the street. Behind him, 2 of his men materialized from the doorway, quiet, alert, hands loose but ready. Lily watched him coming. Her heart slammed against her ribs so violently she thought it might break something inside her. She wanted to run. She wanted to hide. She wanted to disappear into the sidewalk and never be seen again. But she stayed. When Vinny stopped in front of the table, he did not crouch this time. He stood tall, blocking the wind like a wall. His voice was low, meant only for the girls. "What did you see?" Lily's mouth went dry. She glanced at Mia, who shook her head, once sharp, frantic. Lily swallowed. Her voice came out small, trembling, polite. "Sir, there were men. 4 of them. They put something under that silver car over there." She pointed again, finger shaking. "A black box. With wires. They slid under and came back out. I think it's a bomb, sir, for when someone opens the door, or starts it." Vinny did not blink, but inside him the world tilted. Remorse, already a live wire, surged into something hotter, sharper rage at the betrayal so close to home guilt that these children had seen what his own people had missed, and beneath it all a sudden burning protectiveness that caught him completely off guard. He looked at Lily, really looked, and felt the chasm rip wider still. She was so small, so thin, so impossibly brave. He turned his head slightly toward his driver. "Code yellow. Secure the loading zone. No one touches that vehicle." The driver nodded once and moved. Vinny looked back at Lily. "You're sure?" She nodded, tears welling. "I'm sure, sir. I saw it. I didn't want to, but I saw." For a long moment no one spoke. The wind howled. Somewhere down the block a car horn blared, impatient. Vinny reached into his coat, withdrew a plain white card with only a phone number embossed in black. He placed it on the table beside the cookie plate. "If you ever need anything," he said quietly, "call that number, day or night." Lily stared at the card. Her fingers hovered, then closed around it. The paper felt warm from his hand. Vinny turned to leave. "Wait," Lily's voice cracked. "Sir, thank you. For yesterday, and for listening." He paused back to her. His throat worked once. Then he walked away across the street past the silver SUV now surrounded by 4 of his men, and into the building without a backward glance. Behind him, Lily sank to her knees on the cold sidewalk. The card trembled in her fist. Mia dropped beside her arms, wrapping tight. Neither girl cried aloud, but inside Lily something burned, fierce, confusing, terrifyingly bright. She had been seen, and the man who had seen her carried inside him a storm she could not yet name but whose edges she had already begun to touch. A storm that would either destroy him or remake him entirely, and she, small, hungry, invisible Lily Harper, stood at its very center. The clock on the laundromat wall downstairs read 5 minutes past 5 o'clock when Lily and Mia finally gathered the courage to move. The silver SUV still sat untouched in the loading zone, now flanked by 4 of Mr. Rossi's men in dark coats, who stood with arms folded, eyes scanning every passing car and pedestrian. No one approached the vehicle. No one even looked at it too long. The quiet was louder than any shout. Lily clutched the white card in her coat pocket so tightly the edges bit into her palm. The phone number embossed there felt like a lifeline and a curse at the same time. She had memorized it already, had repeated the digits under her breath all afternoon like a prayer, but saying them aloud to someone felt impossible. Who would believe 2 9-year-old girls with nothing but a card table and half a dozen leftover cookies? Mia walked beside her steps, dragging. "This is stupid," she whispered for the 10th time. "We should just go home. Sarah's gonna be worried." Lily didn't answer. Her stomach hurt not just from hunger, though that was constant now. A dull gnawing that never quite went away, but from something deeper. Something that twisted like a knife every time she pictured Mr. Rossi opening that car door tomorrow or the day after. She could still see the black box sliding under the chassis, the casual way the men had zipped the duffel afterward as if they were delivering groceries. They reached the corner nearest the Rossi Enterprises entrance. A low concrete wall separated the sidewalk from the loading zone. Lily stopped, breath coming in shallow puffs that fogged the cold air. "We have to try," she said softly. "Even if they don't listen." Mia's eyes filled. "And if they do, what then? You think those guys in the alley won't figure out who told?" Lily looked at her best friend, really looked, and saw the fear there, raw and naked. Mia's family had lost their apartment 2 winters ago because her mother couldn't pay rent after missing shifts at the factory. They had slept in a church shelter for 3 months. Mia still woke up, sometimes gasping, convinced the landlord was at the door again. Lily understood that fear. She lived it too. But she also lived with the memory of her mother's voice, faint now but never gone. "If you see something wrong and you stay quiet, Lilybug, you're part of the wrong." She took a step forward. The driver, broad-shouldered, clean-shaven, wearing a black windbreaker over a dress shirt, stood beside the silver SUV, arms crossed, watching the street. He looked kinder than the others, less like stone. Lily chose him. She walked up slowly, shoes scraping the pavement. Mia hung back 3 steps, fists balled at her sides. "Excuse me, sir." Lily's voice came out smaller than she intended, barely carrying over the wind. The driver glanced down. Surprise flickered across his face, quick then gone. "Yeah, kid," Lily swallowed. Her tongue felt thick. I need to tell Mr. Rossi something important. About that car." She nodded toward the SUV. "It's not safe." The driver's expression hardened just a fraction. "Mr. Rossi's busy. If you've got something to sell, try the tourists on Michigan Avenue." Lily's cheeks burned despite the cold. "I'm not selling anything. Please." "There were men earlier. They put something under it. A box. With wires. I saw them." The man studied her for a long moment. His eyes flicked to Mia, then back. "You sure about that?" Lily nodded so hard her braid swung. "I'm sure. They thought no one was watching, but we were right here." She pointed to the card table still standing, lonely on the corner. The driver sighed, short, tired. "Look, I appreciate the heads up, but we've got it covered. Go on home before it gets dark." Lily's heart sank like a stone into deep water. "But I said go home." His tone wasn't cruel, just final. He turned away, dismissing her the way everyone always did. Lily stood frozen. Tears pricked hot behind her eyes. She wanted to scream. She wanted to grab his sleeve and make him listen the way Mr. Rossi had listened yesterday. But her arms stayed limp at her sides. Powerless. Invisible again. Mia tugged her elbow. "Come on." They walked back toward the card table in silence. Halfway there, Lily's legs gave out. She dropped to the curb, knees buckling under the weight of everything, the hunger, the cold, the fear, the crushing knowledge that she had failed before she even started. Her vision blurred. The world tilted sideways. For a moment she felt nothing but numb dizziness, as though her body had decided to shut down rather than feel anymore. Mia sat beside her shoulder, pressing close. "It's okay," she whispered, even though her own voice shook. "You tried." Lily shook her head. "It's not okay. He's gonna get in that car someday. and her voice broke. She pressed her palms to her eyes, trying to hold the tears in. They came anyway, silent and burning. Across the street, the front doors opened again. Vinny Rossi stepped out. He had changed into a navy suit tie, loosened slightly at the collar, the only sign that the day had worn on him. His driver moved to open the Escalade door, but Vinny raised a hand. He looked toward the corner. He saw the two girls sitting on the curb. He saw Lily's shoulders shaking. Something inside him snapped, clean, sharp, irreversible. He crossed the street without a word to his men. The wind caught his coat, flaring it behind him like a dark wing. When he reached them, he did not crouch. He simply stood there, a tall shadow blocking the worst of the gusts. What happened? His voice was low, controlled, but there was an edge to it, now something raw. Lily lifted her head. Her face was streaked, eyes wide and red. She tried to speak. Nothing came out at first. Then, in the smallest, most trembling voice, I tried to tell your driver, sir, about the car. He didn't believe me. Vinny's jaw tightened. He glanced toward the silver SUV, then back at her. You told him exactly what you told me. She nodded. Yes, sir. I said there was a box, with wires, underneath. Vinny exhaled through his nose, slow, measured. Inside, the storm raged harder. Remorse clawed at him, vicious and unrelenting. These children, starving, freezing, braver than half the men on his payroll, had risked everything to warn him, and his own people had brushed them off like dust. The betrayal cut deeper than any rival's knife ever had. He looked at Lily again. Really looked. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Her coat was too thin, her cheeks too hollow, her eyes too large, and a face too small. And still she had tried. Again, after being dismissed, after being humiliated, after everything life had already taken from her. A fierce, burning protectiveness surged through him, sudden, overwhelming, almost painful in its intensity. It was not pity. It was something far more dangerous, recognition. He saw himself in her, the boy who once stood on corners, hoping someone would notice, who learned too young that no one ever would. Except now someone had. And that someone was him. He knelt slowly, deliberately bringing his eyes level with hers. You did the right thing, he said quietly. Both of you. Lily blinked. Fresh tears spilled. But he didn't listen. He will now. Vinny's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. He stood, turned to his driver across the street, and raised 2 fingers. The man jogged over immediately. Strip the silver SUV, Vinny said. Every inch. Now. The driver nodded once and moved. Vinny looked back at the girls. Come inside. It's cold out here. Mia stiffened. We can't. You can, Vinny said gently. There's heat. There's coffee. And no one will bother you. Lily hesitated. Her heart hammered, fear and hope colliding so violently she felt dizzy again. She glanced at Mia, who gave the tiniest nod. They followed him. The lobby of Rossi Enterprises smelled of polished wood and faint coffee. Warmth enveloped them like a blanket the moment the doors closed. Lily's fingers tingled as blood rushed back. She had forgotten what real heat felt like. Vinny led them to a small waiting area, leather chairs, a low table with magazines, a coffee station in the corner. He poured 2 cups of hot chocolate from a machine, real chocolate, thick and steaming, and handed them over. Drink, he said. Slowly. Lily wrapped her hands around the cup. The heat seeped into her palms, painful at first, then soothing. She took a sip. It tasted like heaven. Vinny sat across from them, elbows on his knees. Tell me everything you saw, every detail. Lily spoke haltingly at first, then faster. The 4 men, the duffel, the black box, the way they had laughed quietly afterward. Mia added what she remembered, voice guarded but steady. When they finished, silence fell. Vinny stared at the floor for a long moment. Then he looked up. You saved a life today, he said. Maybe more than one. Lily's lip trembled. I didn't want anyone to get hurt. Vinny nodded once. Inside him the chasm yawned wider, still guilt crashing against gratitude, remorse, warring with a fierce paternal ache he could no longer deny. This child, this fragile, starving, impossibly courageous child, had done what no one else had seen him, not as a name or a threat, but as a person worth saving. He reached into his pocket, withdrew another white card, this one with his private cell number, and placed it beside the first. Keep this, he said. If anything happens, if anyone comes near you, call me. Not the other number. This one. Lily took it with shaking fingers. Vinny stood. Stay here until your aunt gets off work. I'll have someone drive you home. He turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. Thank you, he said quietly. Both of you. Then he was gone down the hall toward the men who were already tearing apart the silver SUV piece by piece. Behind him, Lily set her cup down carefully. She looked at Mia. Mia stared back, eyes wide. Neither spoke. But in the warm, quiet rooms, something shifted, small, fragile, but undeniable. Trust had begun to bloom in the cracks. And for Vinnie Rossi, the man who had spent decades building walls no one could breach, the first real breach had come from the smallest hands he had ever known. The tearing inside him grew fiercer still, but this time it felt less like destruction, and more like awakening. The small waiting room in Rossi Enterprises felt like another world. The leather chairs were soft enough to swallow you whole, the carpet thick underfoot, the air warm and scented faintly with coffee and polished wood. Lily sat, curled in one chair, knees drawn to her chest, the 2 white cards pressed between her palms like talismans. The hot chocolate had cooled in the cup beside her, half drunk, the rich sweetness sitting heavy in her empty stomach. She had not eaten since the single packet of oatmeal that morning, dry mixed with tap water because there was no milk left. Mia paced slowly near the window that overlooked the loading zone. The silver SUV had been towed inside the garage bay 20 minutes earlier. Men in dark coveralls moved around it now with tools and lights, their movements precise and unhurried. Every so often one of them glanced toward the waiting room window, but no one came in. No one asked questions. That silence felt louder than any accusation. Lily's eyes kept drifting to the clock on the wall. 5:43. 17 minutes until 6 o'clock, mister. Rossi's usual departure time, the one everyone on the block knew, because the Escalade always rolled out at exactly that moment like clockwork. If the bomb had been meant for tomorrow or the next day or any day after, the men would have waited. But they hadn't. They had placed it now. Tonight. Her fingers tightened around the cards until the edges cut into her skin. A small bead of blood welled on her thumb. She stared at it numb. Mia stopped pacing. We should leave. Sarah's shift ends at 2. She'll be home soon. If we're not there, I know, Lily whispered. Her voice cracked on the last word. But if we leave and something happens? If he gets in that other car tomorrow because we didn't say enough. Mia dropped into the chair beside her. You already said enough. You told the driver. You told Mr. Rossi. What else can 2 kids do? Lily looked at her best friend. Mia's eyes were red, her braids coming loose at the ends from nervous twisting. We can stay, Lily said softly. Just a little longer, until we know it's safe. Mia's shoulders sagged. She leaned her head against Lily's. For a long moment neither spoke. The only sound was the low hum of the heating vents and the distant clink of metal from the garage. Outside, the wind had picked up again, rattling the windows like impatient fingers. Lily thought of their apartment, the single room with the cracked ceiling, the mattress on the floor, the way the cold seeped through the walls, no matter how many blankets they piled on. She thought of Sarah coming home tonight, feet aching, hands raw from scrubbing trays, smiling anyway because she always smiled for Lily. She thought of the eviction notice taped to the door last month, the way the landlord had laughed when Sarah begged for 1 more week. You got till Friday, lady. Clock's ticking. The unfairness of it all crashed over her again, slow at first, then in waves so violent she felt dizzy. Why did some people have heated rooms and full refrigerators while others slept in coats? Why did grown men plant bombs under cars while children sold burned cookies in the wind? Why did no one ever listen until it was almost too late? She pressed her forehead to her knees. Tears came silently soaking the fabric of her jeans. She did not sob aloud. She had learned long ago that crying too loud brought trouble. The door opened. Vinnie Rossi stepped in. He had removed his suit jacket. The white dress shirt sleeves were rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and faint scars that spoke of older fights. His face was drawn lines deeper around his eyes than they had been an hour ago. He carried a small paper bag in one hand. He stopped when he saw the girls. For a heartbeat, something raw flickered across his features, something close to pain before the mask slipped back into place. You're still here, he said quietly. Lily lifted her head. Her cheeks were streaked, but she wiped them quickly with her sleeve. Yes, sir. We wanted to make sure. Vinnie crossed the room in 3 strides, and knelt in front of them close enough that Lily could smell the faint cedar of his cologne, mixed with the sharp scent of motor oil from the garage. He set the bag on the low table. Sandwiches, he said. Turkey and cheese. Chips. Apples. I didn't know what you liked. Mia stared at the bag as though it might bite. Lily's stomach growled loud, embarrassing. She flushed crimson. Vinnie's gaze softened. Eat, please. Lily hesitated, then reached for the bag with trembling fingers. She pulled out one sandwich, unwrapped it slowly. The bread was soft, fresh. The turkey smelled real, not the thin, processed slices Sarah sometimes bought when they had extra change. She took a small bite. Flavor exploded on her tongue, salty, warm, overwhelming. Tears welled again. Thank you, she whispered. Vinnie watched her eat. Inside him, the storm howled louder than ever. Guilt clawed at his ribs, vicious, unrelenting. These children were starving while his refrigerators at home held food no one touched. He had walked past corners like this one for years, telling himself it wasn't his problem. Now it was. Now they were. He cleared his throat. The device was there. Exactly where you said. Remote trigger, wired to the door latch. If I'd opened it tomorrow morning? He let the sentence trail. Lily swallowed hard. I'm glad you're safe, sir. Vinny looked away for a moment, jaw working, then back to her. You shouldn't have had to see that. You shouldn't have had to do any of this. But I did, Lily said simply. And I'd do it again. The words landed like a blow. Vinny felt them in his chest, sharp, piercing. This 9-year-old girl, thin as a shadow, sleep-deprived, half-frozen, had more courage than men twice her age who took his money to protect him. The contrast tore at him, his world of power and wealth against hers, of endless small humiliations, the landlord's sneer, the empty cabinets, the nights when the wind howled so loud she couldn't sleep. He stood abruptly. Wait here. He left the room. Minutes passed. 5. 10. When he returned, he carried 2 thick wool blankets, soft, new smelling of clean laundry, and a small cardboard box. He draped one blanket over each girl's shoulders. The weight was immediate comfort, almost shocking in its gentleness. Then he opened the box. Inside lay 2 pairs of new winter boots, black-lined, sized for small feet. Beside them, 2 pairs of thick socks and 2 knit hats. Mia's breath caught. We can't. You can, Vinny said firmly. And you will. Your shoes have holes. It's going to snow soon. Lily stared at the boots. They looked impossibly perfect, shiny, sturdy, nothing like the cracked sneakers she had worn for 2 years. Her fingers hovered, then touched the leather. It was soft. Real. Tears spilled again. She didn't try to hide them this time. Vinny knelt again. Try them on. She did. Slowly. The boots fit perfectly. Warmth spread from her toes upward, chasing away the constant ache she had stopped noticing because it was always there. Mia followed movements, reluctant but unable to resist. When both girls were wearing the new boots, Vinny sat back on his heels. Better, Lily nodded, throat too tight to speak. Vinny looked at the clock. 5:58. He stood. I have to go. My men will drive you home when your aunt finishes her shift. They'll wait until she's with you. Lily's heart lurched. Sir, be careful, please. Vinny paused at the door. He looked back, really looked at her, and the mask cracked again. Just a little. Just enough for her to see the storm behind his eyes. I will, he said quietly. Because of you. Then he was gone. The room felt colder without him. Lily pulled the blanket tighter. She looked at Mia. Mia stared at her new boots. He's different. Lily nodded slowly. I think so too. Outside, the wind howled louder. Somewhere down the block, a car backfired, sharp, sudden. Both girls flinched. But inside the waiting room, wrapped in wool and warmth, they had never known something fierce kindled in Lily's chest. Determination. She would not let fear win. Not tonight. Not ever. And across the building, in his private office overlooking the city lights, Vinny Rossi stood at the window, fists clenched at his sides. The bomb had been real. The children had been right. And the protectiveness that had ignited in him earlier now burned hotter, fierce, consuming, almost frightening in its power. He thought of Lily's hollow cheeks, her trembling hands, her quiet "I do it again." He had spent decades building an empire on control, on distance, on never letting anyone close enough to hurt. Tonight that empire felt fragile, because a 9-year-old girl with nothing but courage had walked straight through every wall he had ever built, and he found he could not look away. The inner tearing grew more violent still. But beneath the pain, something new stirred. Something that felt dangerously like hope. The clock in the waiting room ticked past 5:59. Outside, the wind had risen to a low moan, pressing against the glass like a living thing. Lily sat rigid in the leather chair, the new blanket still draped over her shoulders, the new boots heavy and unfamiliar on her feet. The warmth of the room felt almost wrong now, too soft, too safe, when she knew what waited beyond the doors. Mia had fallen quiet, staring at her hands, the untouched sandwich resting on her lap like an accusation. A soft knock came at the door. One of Vinny's men, tall, quiet, with a scar across his left eyebrow, leaned in. Mr. Rossi is leaving now. He asked if you wanted to say goodbye. Lily's heart lurched. She looked at Mia, who gave a small, reluctant nod. They followed the man down the polished hallway past framed photographs of city skylines and old black-and-white shots of sanitation trucks from decades ago. The corridor smelled of leather and faint cigar smoke. At the end, a set of double doors opened onto the main lobby. Vinny stood near the entrance coat, back on collar, turned up against the cold that seeped through even here. His driver waited beside the Escalade engine, idling headlights, cutting pale beams across the darkening street. 2 other men flanked Vinny, silent shadows, eyes scanning every angle. When he saw the girls, Vinny's posture shifted, subtle, almost imperceptible. He stepped forward away from his protection detail. "You didn't have to come out," he said quietly. Lily's voice trembled. "We wanted to. To make sure you're careful, sir." Vinny looked down at her, really looked. The lobby lights caught the hollows under her eyes, the way her coat hung too loose on shoulders, too narrow. The sight struck him again harder this time, this child who had eaten half a sandwich like it was treasure, who wore boots he had given her as though they might disappear if she blinked. The protectiveness that had kindled earlier now roared inside him, fierce, possessive, terrifying in its sudden depth. He had never felt anything like it. Not for anyone. He knelt once more, bringing himself to her level. "I'll be careful," he promised. "Because you asked me to." Lily's lip quivered. She reached out hesitant, trembling, and touched the sleeve of his coat. The wool was impossibly soft under her fingertips. "Promise, I promise." For a long heartbeat, they stayed like that small hand on expensive fabric, pale eyes locked on dark ones. The world narrowed to that single point of contact. Then the moment shattered. From across the street came the low rumble of an engine. A dark sedan, older model windows tinted, pulled up sharply at the curb opposite the loading zone. 3 men stepped out, hoodies up, hands in pockets. The tall one from yesterday led them. He stopped at the edge of the sidewalk, eyes fixed on Vinny. Vinny rose slowly. His face hardened into stone. "Stay inside," he told the girls without looking back. But Lily didn't move. Neither did Mia. The tall man called across the street, voice carrying on the wind. "You got our message yet, Rossi?" Vinny's driver tensed. The 2 flanking men stepped forward. Vinny raised a hand. "Stop." He walked out through the revolving door alone. The cold hit him like a slap. He crossed the sidewalk in measured strides, stopping at the curb. 10 feet separated him from the 3 men. "Whatever you think you're doing," Vinny said evenly, "walk away." "Now." The tall one smirked. "We're just talking." "No harm in talking." Vinny's voice dropped lower. "There's harm in everything you've done today, including what's sitting in my garage right now." The smirk faltered. The other 2 shifted uneasily. Inside the lobby, Lily pressed her face to the glass. Her breath fogged the pain. Horror rose in her throat, sharp, choking. She had seen confrontations before, arguments in the hallway, fists in the alley behind the laundromat. But this felt different. This felt like the moment before something broke forever. Mia grabbed her hand. "We should go back." Lily shook her head. "He's alone out there." Vinny took 1 step closer to the curb. "You came here to finish what you started. But you won't. Not tonight. Not ever." The tall man laughed short-forced. Big words for a man who's got kids playing lookout for him now. Vinny's eyes narrowed. "Leave the kids out of it." The words landed heavy. The tall man's gaze flicked toward the lobby windows, toward Lily and Mia. Recognition flashed across his face. Lily felt it like ice water down her spine. She stepped backward instinctively, bumping into Mia. The world tilted. Dizziness swept over her again, violent and sudden. Her knees buckled. Mia caught her elbow. Outside, Vinny saw the shift in the man's posture, the way his hand twitched toward his pocket. He moved. In 3 strides, he closed the distance, grabbing the tall man's wrist before the hand could emerge. The grip was iron. The man grunted, tried to pull free. Vinny twisted, controlled, precise, until the arm locked behind the man's back. The other 2 lunged. Vinny's men poured from the doors, silent, fast. One caught the first attacker by the collar, slamming him against the sedan's hood. The second man froze, hands raised. No punches. No blood. Just swift, practiced restraint. Vinny leaned close to the tall man's ear. "Tell your boss this ends here, or the next time it won't be words." He released the wrist. The man stumbled back, rubbing his arm, face pale with rage and fear. Vinny turned away. The 3 men scrambled into the sedan. Tires squealed as they peeled away. The lobby doors hissed open again. Vinny stepped back inside, coat dusted with windblown grit. Lily stared up at him. Her face was ashen, eyes huge. You stopped them." Vinny exhaled slowly. "They're gone. For now." He looked at her, shaking pale, still clutching the blanket like a shield. The sight tore through him again deeper, this time more viciously. This child had stood in the doorway, refusing to hide, refusing to run, while grown men circled like wolves. The guilt that had gnawed at him for weeks now roared into something unbearable. Remorse for every day he had walked past corners like hers without stopping. For every night he had slept warm, while she shivered for every moment he had. Believed power meant distance. He knelt again, slow, deliberate. Lily's breath hitched. She reached out, small fingers brushing his sleeve once more. "You're shaking," he said softly. "So are you," she whispered. It was true. His hand, when he lifted it to brush a strand of hair from her forehead, trembled. For the first time in decades, Vinny Rossi felt the full weight of what he had become, and what he could still become. He gathered her into his arms, gentle, careful, as though she might break. She stiffened at first, then melted against him, face buried in his coat. The wool smelled of cedar and cold air, and something safe. She began to cry, quiet, exhausted sobs that shook her whole body. Vinny held her tighter. His own eyes burned. He did not cry, he had forgotten how long ago, but the ache in his chest was so fierce it felt like weeping. Mia stood beside them, arms wrapped around herself, watching with wide eyes. For once she did not pull away. Vinny looked over Lily's head at his men. "Get the car. We're taking them home." One of the men nodded. "Sir, the Escalade. The silver one," Vinny said. "It's cleared. It's safe." He lifted Lily easily as though she weighed nothing and carried her toward the garage bay. Mia followed close behind, clutching the blanket. In the garage, the silver SUV waited, hood-up interior lights on every panel and wire inspected and cleared. Vinny settled Lily in the back seat, buckling her in himself. Mia climbed in beside her. As the engine purred to life, Vinny slid into the seat opposite them. The divider rose between them and the driver. Silence fell thick, warm, fragile. Lily looked at him across the dim space. "Why are you doing this?" Vinny met her gaze. "Because you saved me today. More than once." She shook her head slowly. I didn't want you to get hurt." The words pierced him again, clean through. He reached across the seat, took her small hand in his larger one. "You won't be hurt anymore," he said quietly. "Not if I can help it." Lily stared at their joined hands. Tears slipped down her cheeks again. Outside, Chicago rolled past neon signs, flickering wind, whipping litter across empty lots. Inside the car, the heater hummed softly. The disparity pressed against every surface, leather seats against patched coats, heated air against wind-chapped skin, safety against years of fear. But in that small, warm space, something unbreakable had begun to form. Trust, fierce, burning, overwhelming. And for Vinny Rossi, love not the shallow kind he had known in passing, but something deeper, paternal, redemptive, had taken root in the ruins of his heart. The tearing inside him reached its peak, violent, numbing, almost unbearable. Yet beneath it, for the first time, he felt the faint stirrings of healing. Because a child who had nothing had given him everything. And he would spend the rest of his life making sure she never had nothing again. The silver SUV glided through the South Side streets, with the quiet authority of something untouchable. Inside, the leather seats cradled Lily and Mia, like a promise they had never dared believe in. The heater whispered warm air across their faces, chasing away the last traces of the wind that had bitten them for so many months. Lily sat pressed against the door, small hands still clutching the edges of the wool blanket, eyes fixed on Vinny across from her. He had not spoken since the confrontation at the curb. His gaze remained on the passing city, dark tenements flickering neon from corner stores, the occasional flash of headlights, but she could see the tension in the line of his jaw, the way his fingers flexed once, twice against the armrest. Mia leaned her head against Lily's shoulder. "This feels like a dream," she whispered. "A good one. But dreams end." Lily did not answer. Her heart beat too fast, too loud. Every few seconds she glanced at the rear window, half expecting the dark sedan to reappear. Headlights blazing, men spilling out again. The memory of Vinny's hand on the tall man's wrist, replayed in her mind, controlled, swift, terrifying in its calm. She had never seen power used that way, not to hurt for the sake of hurting, but to protect. The thought made her dizzy all over again. She pressed her forehead to the cool glass, willing the spinning to stop. Vinny broke the silence. "We're almost there. Tell me where to turn." Lily lifted her head. "Left on 43rd. Then right after the laundromat. It's the building with the blue door that sticks." The driver nodded without a word. The SUV eased left tires, whispering over cracked asphalt. The neighborhood closed in row houses, sagging under years of neglect, chain-link fences bent and rusted streetlights missing bulbs so that shadows pooled deeper than they should. Lily felt the familiar shame rise in her throat. This was home. This was where she and Sarah survived. Seeing it now framed by the tinted windows of a luxury vehicle made the poverty feel sharper, more humiliating than ever. The SUV slowed in front of the narrow 3-story building. The blue door hung slightly ajar, paint peeling in long curls. A single bulb burned above it, flickering like a dying heartbeat. Sarah's shift had ended 40 minutes ago. She would be inside, probably heating water for tea on the hot plate because the stove burner had stopped working last week. Vinny studied the building for a long moment. His expression did not change, but inside him the chasm split wider still. He saw the cracked steps, the trash bags split open by raccoons on the sidewalk, the way the windows were taped with cardboard against drafts. He remembered his own childhood apartment 2 miles north, similar in every cruel detail. The difference now was obscene. He owned penthouses with floor-to-ceiling glass, private elevators, chefs on call. These children lived with taped windows and broken stoves. The injustice of it burned like acid in his veins. He turned to the girls. "I'm coming up with you." Lily's eyes widened. Sarah. She might be scared if she sees you. I'll be careful, he said gently. But I need to make sure you're safe inside. Mia shifted uncomfortably. People talk. If they see a man like you here, let them talk, Vinny said. There was steel beneath the quiet. Tonight, safety matters more. They climbed out. The wind hit them immediately, sharp, unrelenting. Lily shivered despite the new coat Vinny had draped over her shoulders in the garage. He walked between them, a tall shield against the gusts, one hand resting lightly on each girl's shoulder as they mounted the cracked steps. The hallway smelled of boiled cabbage and damp plaster. A baby cried somewhere on the second floor. Lily led the way up the narrow stairs, boots thudding softly on warped wood. At the third-floor landing, she stopped in front of apartment 3B. The door was thin, the lock dented from years of forced entry attempts. She knocked twice, soft, familiar. Sarah opened the door almost immediately. She was still in her cafeteria uniform, faded blue scrubs name tag, crooked hair pulled back in a tired knot. Exhaustion etched deep lines around her eyes, but they widened the instant she saw Lily and Mia. Then they landed on Vinny. Her hand flew to her throat. Lily, what it's okay, Aunt Sarah, Lily said quickly, voice small and trembling. This is Mr. Rossi. He helped us. Sarah's gaze darted from the girl's new boots to the wool blankets to the man standing behind them, tall, fair-skinned, expensive coat, quiet authority radiating from him like heat. Recognition flickered. Everyone in the neighborhood knew the name Rossi. Not all of it was good. Vinny stepped forward half a pace. Ma'am, he said, voice low and respectful. Your niece and her friend saw something dangerous today. They warned me. I brought them home to make sure they got here safe. Sarah's hand trembled on the doorframe. Dangerous Lily stepped inside, pulling Mia with her. The apartment was one-room mattress in the corner, hot plate on a card table, single chair clothes hung on nails in the wall. No television. No pictures except a small framed photo of Lily's mother on the windowsill. The radiator hissed once and fell silent. Sarah closed the door behind Vinny. Tell me. Lily did, halting at first, then in a rush. The men, the black box, the confrontation, Vinny's promise. Sarah listened, face growing paler with every word. When Lily finished, Sarah sank onto the edge of the mattress, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles whitened. Vinny remained standing near the door, careful not to intrude further. The device was real, he said quietly. My people removed it. The men who planted it, they're gone for tonight. But they'll try again. I'd like to post a man outside tonight. Discreet, just to watch. Sarah looked up at him. Tears stood in her eyes. Why are you doing this? You don't know us. Vinny met her gaze. I know your niece saved my life. That's enough. Sarah's lip trembled. She looked at Lily, thin, exhausted eyes too old, and something inside her broke quietly. We've been trying so hard, she whispered. Every day. But it's never enough. The rent, the heat, the food. I thought if I just kept going. Vinny felt the words like blows. He knelt beside the mattress, slow, careful. You don't have to do it alone anymore. Sarah shook her head. We can't take charity. Not like this. It's not charity, Vinny said. It's debt. I owe your niece my life, and I pay my debts. Silence fell thick, heavy with years of struggle. Lily stepped forward. She placed one small hand on Sarah's shoulder, the other reaching back to touch Vinny's sleeve. He's good, Aunt Sarah. I know he is. Sarah looked between them. Then slowly she nodded. Vinny stood. I'll arrange the watch. And tomorrow, after you've rested, I'd like to speak again. About schools. About a safer place. About whatever you need. Sarah wiped her eyes. Tomorrow. Vinny turned to leave. At the door, he paused, looked back at Lily. You were brave tonight, he said softly. Braver than anyone should have to be. Lily managed a tiny smile. You listened. That's what mattered. He nodded once. Then he was gone down the stairs into the night where one of his men waited in a nondescript sedan across the street. As the door closed behind him, Sarah pulled both girls into her arms. They sank onto the mattress together, blankets tangling around them. For the first time in years, the room felt less cold. Outside, Vinny slid into the back of the waiting car. The driver pulled away smoothly. He stared out at the receding building, the blue door, the flickering bulb, the small window where three shadows now sat close together. The tearing inside him reached a new, excruciating peak. Remorse crashed against gratitude, guilt against fierce paternal love. He had built an empire on control, on never needing anyone. Tonight, he understood he needed them. This child, this family, had cracked open everything he thought he knew about power and protection. He leaned his head back against the seat, closed his eyes. For the first time in decades, Vinny Rossi allowed himself to feel the full weight of what he had almost lost, not just his life, but the chance to be something more than the man who walked past suffering without stopping. And in that quiet, swaying car beneath the storm still raging in his chest, a single truth settled like stone. He would never walk past again. Not her, not them, never again. The silver SUV pulled away from the curb on 43rd Street at exactly 6:23, leaving behind the flickering blue door and the single bulb that never quite reached the sidewalk. Inside the car, Vinnie Rossi sat motionless, hands resting on his knees, staring at the city lights, streaking past like distant stars. The heater hummed steadily, but he felt none of its warmth. The cold that gripped him now came from within, deep, relentless, a frost that had settled into his bones years ago and refused to thaw. He had left them with a promise tomorrow. A conversation. Schools. A safer place. Words that sounded simple when spoken, yet carried the weight of everything he had avoided for decades. He had not asked for their address again. He already knew it. One quiet call to his people would have the building history, the landlord's name, the eviction filings, the utility shut-off notices. Knowledge was power, and power had always been his shield. Tonight, that shield felt paper-thin. Back at the headquarters, the garage bay doors rolled shut behind him with a low metallic thud. The silver SUV, now cleared, inspected, twice every wire and connection triple-checked, sat under bright halogen lights, like a patient on an operating table. His men moved around it in quiet efficiency tools, clinking voices low. No one spoke to him directly. They knew better. Vinnie walked past them without a word, coat still on, and took the private elevator to the top floor. The doors opened onto his office, dark wood paneling, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering downtown skyline, a desk the size of a small car, and a single leather chair that cost more than most families paid in rent for. A year. He did not sit. He crossed to the window and pressed his palm against the cool glass. Chicago spread below him, vast, indifferent, beautiful in its cruelty. Somewhere in that sprawl, 3 people huddled in a single room with a broken stove and taped windows. 3 people who had in the space of one afternoon cracked open every certainty he had built his life upon. He reached into his pocket and withdrew the small locket Lily had worn around her neck. She had taken it off in the car, nervous fingers fumbling with the clasp, because the chain had caught on the new blanket and she had been afraid it would break. She had placed it carefully in his hand, trusting him to hold it for her until they reached home. "It's my mom's," she had whispered. "The only thing I have left of her." Vinnie opened the locket now. Inside, behind scratched glass, was a faded photograph. A young woman, perhaps 25, dark hair, loose, smiling at the camera with eyes that were unmistakably Lily's, large, luminous, carrying a quiet strength even in stillness. He stared at the face for a long moment. Recognition hit him like a slow rolling wave. He knew her. Not well. Not deeply. A single winter, 15 years ago, when he was still climbing, still hungry, still convinced that every connection was temporary. Her name had been Elena Harper. She had worked as a waitress at a diner near one of his early warehouses. They had talked late one night after closing coffee laughter, the kind of reckless intimacy that comes when 2 people believe the world cannot touch them. It had lasted 3 months. Then she had disappeared. No note, no goodbye. He had told himself it was better that way. He had moved on. Now the math aligned with brutal clarity. Lily was 9, 15 years ago, plus 9 months of pregnancy. The timeline fit too perfectly to be coincidence. His knees buckled. He caught himself on the edge of the desk, breath coming short and sharp. The locket slipped from his fingers and clattered onto the polished wood. The sound echoed in the empty room like a gunshot. Guilt, already a living thing inside him, surged into something monstrous. He had left her. He had left them both. Elena had fled his world, his danger, his choices, and raised their daughter alone. Alone through the cold nights, the empty cabinets, the landlord's threats. Alone until the accident that took her life 2 years ago, leaving Sarah to carry the burden. And Lily, his daughter, had grown up hungry, invisible, selling lemonade on corners he drove past every day. The remorse was so violent it felt physical, a fist around his heart, squeezing until he could not breathe. He slid to the floor, back against the desk, head in his hands. For the first time since he was a boy watching his father walk out the door, Vinnie Rossi wept, silent, wrenching sobs that shook his broad shoulders. No sound escaped. He would not allow it. But the tears came anyway, hot and unstoppable. Across the city, in the single room above the laundromat, Lily lay curled on the mattress between Sarah and Mia. The new blankets smelled of clean laundry and something expensive. The boots sat neatly by the door, waiting. The hot chocolate from earlier lingered on her tongue like a memory she was afraid to lose. Sarah had not spoken much after Vinnie left. She had simply held the girls, rocking them gently until their breathing evened. Now, in the dark, she whispered, "He seems kind, in his way." Lily nodded against her aunt's shoulder. He listened, Aunt Sarah. No one ever listened before. Sarah's hand stroked Lily's hair, slow, rhythmic. Sometimes people change when they see what really matters. Lily closed her eyes. The locket was gone, left in Mr. Rossi's hand, but she could still feel its weight against her chest. She thought of his arms around her in the lobby, the way he had carried her like she weighed nothing, the promise in his voice. Trust had taken root so quickly it frightened her. What if it vanished tomorrow? What if he disappeared like everyone else? But beneath the fear burned something brighter: attachment. Fierce, immediate, overwhelming. He had seen her. Not as a street kid, not as a problem, but as someone worth protecting. The feeling was so intense it hurt. Sharp, sweet, confusing. She had never known anyone to look at her that way. Not even her mother, who had loved her but had been too tired, too sick, too alone. In the quiet, Lily whispered, "I think he's going to come back." Sarah kissed her forehead. "I think so too, baby girl." Across town, Vinny rose from the floor. His face was wet eyes, red-rimmed but steady. He picked up the locket, closed it gently, and slipped it into his pocket. Then he crossed to the desk phone and pressed a single button. Chen, his most trusted driver, answered on the first ring. "Sir, tomorrow morning," Vinny said. 6 o'clock. Bring the black sedan. We're going back to 43rd Street. "Yes, sir." Vinny hung up. He walked to the window again. The city glittered below, cold, vast, unforgiving. But tonight, it looked different. Smaller. Less invincible. He placed his palm against the glass once more. "I'm sorry," he whispered to Elena, to Lily, to the boy he had once been. The words felt inadequate, but they were the only ones he had. Then he turned away from the window. Tomorrow he would begin to repay a debt that could never truly be settled. Not with money, not with power, but with presence, with protection, with the one thing he had denied himself for so long: family. The tearing inside him had not stopped. If anything, it had deepened, violent, raw, almost sacred in its intensity. But now it carved space for something new. Redemption. And in that space, a fierce paternal love burned brighter than any empire he had ever built. He would go to them tomorrow. He would kneel again if he had to. He would listen. And this time he would never walk away. October 2025 dawned gray and heavy over Chicago, the kind of morning where the sky pressed down like a lid on a simmering pot. Vinny Rossi stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse before the sun had fully risen, black coffee cooling untouched in his hand. The city sprawled below, endless grids of lights, still flickering in the pre-dawn haze, but his eyes were fixed on the south, toward the invisible line where the glittering downtown gave way to the cracked sidewalks and sagging porches. Of the south side, toward 43rd Street, toward them. He had not slept. The locket lay on the nightstand beside his bed, open. Elena's photograph staring up at him through the night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Lily's face overlaid on her mother's. The same wide eyes, the same quiet strength, the same hollows carved by years of going without. The guilt had become a physical presence, now sitting on his chest, pressing until his ribs ached. He had fathered a child. He had left her to starve, to shiver, to sell lemonade in the wind, while he built towers of glass and steel. The knowledge burned hotter than any rival's threat ever had. At 5:45, he dressed simple charcoal sweater, dark jeans, no tie, no armor of suit and cufflinks. He wanted to look like a man, not a myth. Chen waited in the underground garage with the black sedan. No Escalade today. No show of power. Just quiet arrival. They reached the building at 6:22. The blue door still hung ajar. A single light burned in the third-floor window, dim, steady. Vinny climbed the stairs alone. His footsteps echoed in the narrow stairwell, each one heavier than the last. Sarah opened the door before he knocked. She had been watching from the window. Her eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted, but there was a flicker of something new in them, hope fragile and wary. "Mr. Rossi," she said softly. "You came. I promised I would." She stepped aside. The room looked smaller in daylight, more threadbare. The mattress sagged in the middle. A single pot sat on the hot plate water, just beginning to steam. Lily and Mia sat cross-legged on the floor, new boots lined up neatly beside them like sentinels. Both girls looked up when he entered. Lily's face lit bright, unguarded, almost painful in its trust. Vinny knelt immediately, bringing himself to their level. "Good morning," he said quietly. Lily's voice was small, polite, trembling with the effort to stay calm. "Good morning, sir." He looked at Sarah. "May I speak with them?" "With all of you," Sarah nodded. She pulled the single chair forward for herself. Vinny remained on his knees on the worn linoleum in the cold room, because standing would have felt like towering over them, and he could not bear that today. "I've made arrangements," he began. "A 3-bedroom apartment in a safer building. Paid in full. Good schools nearby. Tutoring if you want it. Medical care. Everything you need to start again." Sarah's breath caught. "We can't accept you can," Vinny said gently. "And you will." "Because Lily saved my life yesterday, and because," his voice cracked. He looked at Lily. Because she's my daughter. The room went still. Lily's eyes widened. Confusion washed over her face, shock then, a dizzying rush of something she could not name. She swayed slightly, as though the floor had tilted beneath her. Mia reached out instinctively, steadying her. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. Tears spilled immediately. Elena. She never told me who. She just said he was complicated, dangerous, that she left to keep Lily safe. Vinny nodded once. I didn't know. Until last night. The locket, the picture, the timing. He looked at Lily again. I'm so sorry, Lily. I didn't know you existed. If I had, Lily stared at him. Tears welled hot and sudden. You're my dad? The word hung in the air, small, fragile, enormous. Vinny's throat worked. Yes, if you'll let me be. Lily's lip trembled. She looked down at her hands, thin, chapped nails bitten short from months of worry. Then she looked up again. You came back. I'll always come back now, he said. The promise felt like a vow carved into bone. Mia shifted uncomfortably. This is a lot. Lily reached for her best friend's hand. It is, but he's good, Mia. I know he is. Sarah wiped her eyes. What happens next? Vinny exhaled slowly. We move you today. My people are waiting downstairs with a van. Everything you want to take, take it. The rest we'll replace. No strings, no debt, just family. The word landed like a stone in deep water, ripples spreading outward. Lily stood slowly. Her legs shook. She walked the 3 steps to Vinny and wrapped her arms around his neck. He froze for one heartbeat, then folded her close, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other around her narrow back. She was so small, so light, so impossibly precious. I'm scared, she whispered into his shoulder. I know, he whispered back. I'm scared too, but we'll be scared together. Outside, the day brightened, slightly weak sunlight filtering through the grime on the window. Inside, the room felt warmer than it ever had, but tension lingered. Mia watched from the floor, arms crossed, eyes guarded. She had seen too many promises break, too many men come and go. She did not trust easily. What if you change your mind? She asked quietly. What if tomorrow you decide we're too much trouble? Vinny looked at her over Lily's head. I won't. Mia's jaw tightened. People say that. I know they do, Vinny said. I've said it myself, but I'm saying it now and I mean it. You're part of this too, Mia. If Lily wants you with us, you're with us. Mia blinked. Something softened just a fraction in her expression. Sarah rose. Let's pack what we can carry. The rest, we'll figure out. They moved quietly, methodical, almost reverent. Sarah folded the few clothes into a single duffel. Lily took the framed photo of her mother, the family Bible with its handwritten notes, the locket. Vinny returned to her with careful fingers. Mia hesitated, then added her own small backpack, everything she owned in the world. Downstairs, 2 black vans waited discreet, unmarked. Men in plain clothes helped load the few belongings. No fanfare, no spectacle, just quiet efficiency. As they climbed into the lead van, Lily paused on the step. She looked back at the building, the blue door, the flickering bulb, the room where she had spent so many cold nights curled against Sarah and Mia for warmth. Vinny stood beside her. You don't have to say goodbye forever, he said softly. We can come back, visit, help the neighbors if you want. Lily nodded. Tears slipped down her cheeks again. It's all I've ever known. I know, he said. And I'm sorry it was so hard. She reached up, hesitant, and slipped her hand into his. His fingers closed around hers, warm, steady, safe. The vans pulled away. The new apartment was on the north side, quiet street brick building with a doorman, 3 bedrooms, high ceilings, sunlight pouring through every window. The kitchen had a full refrigerator already stocked. The bedrooms had beds with clean linens, desks, lamps. A small balcony overlooked a park where children played. Lily stepped inside first. Her boots echoed on hardwood floors that gleamed like water. She turned in a slow circle, eyes wide, mouth open in silent wonder. Vinny watched her. The sight of her in this space, safe, warm, surrounded by more than she had ever dreamed, tore at him again. Gratitude crashed against remorse. Love, fierce, paternal burning, warred with the guilt that would never fully leave. Sarah walked to the kitchen window. It's beautiful, she whispered. Too beautiful. It's yours, Vinny said. All of it. Mia lingered near the door, arms folded. This doesn't feel real. Lily crossed to her. It is. And you're staying too. Right, Mia looked at Vinny. He nodded once. Slowly, Mia's shoulders relaxed. Okay, she said quietly. But if you hurt them, I won't, Vinny said. Ever. The afternoon passed in quiet moments, unpacking the few belongings. Sarah making tea in a real kitchen, Lily exploring each room with careful steps, as though afraid the floor might vanish. Vinny stayed helping hang the framed photo on the wall, sitting on the floor with the girls, while they paged through the Bible, listening as Lily read her mother's handwritten notes aloud. When evening came, he prepared to leave. Lily followed him to the door. "You're coming back tomorrow, he promised. And every day after. She hugged him again tight, desperate, trusting. "Thank you, Dad." The word pierced him clean through. He held her close eyes burning. "Thank you," he whispered, "for giving me a second chance." He left them in the warm, lighted apartment, 3 people who had once had nothing now, surrounded by everything he could give. In the elevator down alone, Vinny leaned against the wall. The tearing inside him had not eased. If anything, it had deepened, violent, raw, sacred. But now it carved space, not just for guilt, but for healing, for love, for family. And for the first time in his life, Vinny Rossi understood that power was not in the empire he had built. It was in the small hand that had reached for his and refused to let go. 3 weeks had passed since the move to the Northside apartment. October 2025 slipped toward its end, the days growing shorter, the air sharper with the promise of winter. The new home had begun to feel less like a borrowed dream and more like something real. Breakfast smells drifting from the kitchen each morning, laughter echoing down hallways that once held only silence, the soft click of light switches that always worked. Sarah had started night classes toward a nursing degree. Vinny had quietly paid the tuition without being asked. Mia attended the same school as Lily now, both girls in fresh uniforms, backpacks heavy with textbooks instead of worry. Lily thrived in small, visible ways. Color returned to her cheeks. Her steps grew lighter. She read voraciously from the shelves. Vinny had filled books about courage, kindness, faraway places. Every evening she waited by the window for the black sedan to pull up. When Vinny stepped out, she ran to the door before he could knock arms open. He knelt every time habit now, and let her wrap herself around him. The word "Dad" came easier each day, though it still carried a tremor of wonder, as though saying it aloud might make the miracle disappear. Vinny, too, had changed. The man who once measured time in deals and deadlines now scheduled school pickups, parent-teacher conferences, quiet dinners where he listened more than he spoke. His empire still existed, meetings in shadowed rooms, contracts signed in private, but the ruthless edge had dulled. He delegated more. He walked away from deals that once would have meant war. His men noticed. Some approved quietly. Others whispered. The whispers became louder on the night of October 31st. Halloween fell on a Friday. The girls had begged to go trick-or-treating in the new neighborhood, something neither had ever done. Sarah agreed on condition Vinny accompanied them. He had arrived early, dressed simply in dark jeans and a black sweater, no coat, despite the chill. A single security man, discreet, unarmed, trailed half a block behind. They walked the tree-lined streets together. Lily wore a handmade witch costume Sarah had sewn from old black fabric and a pointed hat from the dollar store. Mia was a cat-black leotard drawn on whiskers ears from construction paper. Vinny carried their plastic pumpkins, one in each hand, while the girls darted from porch to porch, voices bright with laughter he had never heard before. At the corner of Sheridan and Lakeshore, the mood shifted. A black SUV, older model windows, tinted too dark, idled at the curb ahead. 3 men stepped out. Hoodies up, faces shadowed. The tall one from weeks earlier led them again. He had been released on bail. Vinny's people had confirmed it 2 days prior. Now he stood blocking the sidewalk, arms loose but ready. Vinny stopped immediately. He set the pumpkins down slowly. "Girls, behind me." Lily froze. Mia grabbed her hand. Both stepped back, eyes wide. The tall man smiled, thin, cold. "Nice family outing, Rossi. Didn't know you played house now." Vinny's voice was calm steel. "Walk away. This isn't the place." "Funny," the man said. "We were thinking the same about you. You've been pulling back, cutting deals. Makes some people nervous. Makes them think you're going soft." Vinny took 1 step forward. "You want to talk business, we talk business. Not here. Not with children." The tall man's gaze slid past Vinny to Lily. Recognition flickered. Cute kid. Looks familiar. Almost like Vinny moved fast, silent. He closed the distance in 2 strides, hand closing around the man's throat, not choking, just holding firm enough to pin him against the SUV door. The other 2 men tensed but did not advance. Vinny's shadow loomed behind him, a silent promise. "You touch them," Vinny said, voice low, lethal, "and there won't be enough left of you to identify." The tall man's smirk vanished. His hands came up slowly. "Easy, old man. Just talking." Vinny released him. The man staggered back, coughing. "Get in your car," Vinny said. "Drive away. Don't come back to this neighborhood. Ever." The 3 men climbed in. The SUV peeled away, tires smoking. Vinny turned back to the girls. Lily's face was ashen. She swayed, dizziness sweeping over her, again violent and sudden. Her knees buckled. Vinny caught her before she hit the ground, lifting her into his arms. "Lily, I'm okay," she whispered, but her voice shook. I got scared." Mia stood frozen, eyes huge. They knew her. They looked at her like Vinny's jaw clenched. "They won't touch her. I swear it." He carried Lily the rest of the way home, 6 blocks her head against his shoulder, small arms around his neck. Mia walked beside them, silent, clutching her plastic pumpkin like a shield. Inside the apartment, Sarah met them at the door. One look at Lily's face and she paled. "What happened?" Vinny explained, quiet, controlled. Sarah listened, hands trembling. When he finished, she sank onto the couch. "They're never going to stop, are they?" "They will," Vinny said. "I'll make sure." But that night, the threat returned closer, crueler. At 2:17 in the morning, the building's fire alarm shrieked. Smoke detectors wailed on every floor. Vinny, sleeping in the guest room he had insisted on keeping ready, bolted upright. He was at Lily's door in seconds. Smoke curled under the hallway ceiling, thin at first, then thickening. Acrid. Chemical. Vinny scooped Lily from her bed. She woke, gasping, confused, coughing. "Dad, hold on to me," he said. He wrapped her in her blanket, lifted her, and ran. Sarah and Mia were already in the hall. Flames licked the stairwell door, small but growing fast. Someone had poured accelerant. The fire was deliberate. Vinny kicked open the emergency exit to the fire escape. Cold night air rushed in. He carried Lily down the metal stairs, her arms tight around his neck, face buried against his shoulder. Halfway down, a section of railing gave way, rusted through, weakened deliberately. Vinny twisted, shielding Lily with his body as they stumbled. He felt the burn across his forearm, hot metal searing skin. Pain flared white-hot. He ignored it. At street level, sirens already wailed in the distance. Vinny set Lily down carefully on the grass across the street. She clung to him, shaking violently. Sarah and Mia joined them. Neighbors poured out, some in pajamas, some carrying children. The building burned brighter now, orange light painting their faces. Vinny knelt in front of Lily. Blood seeped through his sleeve. He ignored it. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. Tears streamed down her soot-streaked face. "Your arm. It's nothing," he lied. But it wasn't nothing. The wound was deep, second-degree weeping. And beneath the physical pain roared something deeper terror, that he had almost failed her again, that his past had reached out and tried to take her from him. Lily reached for his injured arm, small fingers hovering, afraid to touch. "You're bleeding." Vinny cupped her face with his good hand. "I'd bleed 1,000 times before I let anything happen to you." She threw herself into his arms again, desperate, sobbing. "Don't leave me. Please don't leave me." "Never," he whispered. "Never." Firefighters arrived. Police. Statements were taken. Arson-confirmed gasoline trail leading from the alley. Witnesses described the same black SUV circling earlier. Vinny refused treatment until the girls were safe, wrapped in blankets, checked by paramedics, given water and oxygen. Only then did he allow a medic to bandage his arm. In the hospital waiting room hours later, 4:30 in the morning, Lily sat curled in his lap despite the nurses' protests. Mia slept against Sarah on the next bench. Vinny held Lily close, rocking her gently. She looked up at him, eyes huge, exhausted. "Why do they hate us? They don't hate you," Vinny said softly. "They hate me, and they'll never get close enough to hurt you again." She touched his bandaged arm. "You got hurt because of me." "No," he said fiercely. "I got hurt protecting what matters most." "There's a difference." Tears slipped down her cheeks again. "I love you, Dad." The words shattered him clean through. He buried his face in her hair, shoulders shaking once silently. "I love you too," he whispered, "more than anything in this world." In the quiet of the waiting room, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, distant voices on intercoms, Vinny Rossi felt the tearing inside him reach its most brutal crescendo. Guilt, remorse, terror, love, all colliding, all consuming. He had almost lost her tonight. His daughter, his reason. But she was here, safe, in his arms. And that single truth was enough to begin stitching the wound closed, not perfectly, not completely, but enough to keep breathing, enough to keep fighting, enough to keep loving her with every fierce, broken piece of his heart. November 2025 arrived with sleet that stung like tiny needles against the windows of the Northside apartment. The building stood quiet and secure, doorman 24 hours, cameras in every hallway, a private elevator that required a key fob Vinny had personally programmed. Yet safety felt thinner now, stretched taut after the fire. The arson investigation dragged on. Evidence pointed to the same crew that had planted the bomb weeks earlier, but no arrests had been made. Vinny's men patrolled the block in unmarked cars. He slept little, often sitting in the living room armchair until dawn, watching the street below. Lily had taken to sleeping with the door open so she could see the hallway light. Nightmares came most nights, flames licking the stairs, the tall man's cold smile, Vinny's bandaged arm bleeding through white gauze. She woke, gasping, small hands clutching the sheets until Sarah or Vinny appeared in the doorway. He came every time, quiet footsteps, gentle voice, until she settled again. The ritual had become sacred, his presence, her breathing, slowing the hallway, light spilling across the floor like spilled milk. One Tuesday afternoon, while Sarah was at her nursing class and Mia at after-school art club, Vinny arrived early. He carried a small paper bag, fresh pastries from the bakery 2 blocks over, and a stack of library books Lily had requested. The apartment smelled of cinnamon from the candles Sarah had lit that morning. Lily met him at the door, socks sliding on hardwood, arms open before he could set anything down. He knelt, always knelt now, and let her hug him, her cheek pressed against his shoulder. She smelled of strawberry shampoo and the faint trace of hospital antiseptic that still clung to his skin from the last dressing change. "You're early," she said softly. "Couldn't wait," he answered. The truth was simpler, he could not bear being away. They sat on the living room rug. Lily opened the pastry bag, first 2 chocolate croissants still warm. She broke one in half and offered him the larger piece. He took it, though his stomach had been knotted for days. Halfway through the second croissant, Lily looked up. "Dad, can I ask something? Anything?" She hesitated, fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. "Why didn't Mom tell you about me?" Vinny's hand stilled. The question had hung between them unspoken for weeks. He set the pastry down carefully. "I don't know the whole answer," he said quietly. "But I think she was protecting you. My world was dangerous then, more dangerous than now. She must have decided you'd be safer without me in it." Lily nodded slowly. "Aunt Sarah said the same thing once, that Mom cried for days after she left Chicago. But she never said your name." Vinny exhaled, long, unsteady. "I wish she had." Lily reached for his hand. Her fingers were small, still faintly calloused from months of gripping cold metal lemonade pitchers. "I'm glad you're here now." He squeezed her hand. "Me too, kid." The moment stretched quiet, tender, almost holy. Then the doorbell rang. Vinny rose immediately. "Stay here." He checked the peephole. Sarah stood outside early from class coat, dusted with sleet expression, strange. He opened the door. Sarah stepped inside, eyes red, cheeks flushed from cold and something else. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it for support. "Vinny," she said, voice trembling. "We need to talk. Alone." Lily looked up from the rug. "Aunt Sarah, go to your room for a minute, sweetheart," Sarah said gently. "Just a minute." Lily hesitated, then obeyed, small footsteps retreating down the hall. Vinny waited until the bedroom door clicked shut. Sarah pulled an envelope from her coat pocket, old yellowed at the edges, handwriting he recognized instantly as Elena's. "She wrote this the night before the accident," Sarah said. "Asked me to give it to you if you ever came looking. I kept it hidden, all these years." Vinny took the envelope. His fingers felt numb. He opened it. The letter was short, 2 pages, ink faded but legible. "Vinny, if you're reading this, you've found her. Or she's found you. I never told you because I was terrified. Your life, the people you answered to, the things you did. I saw enough to know Lily would never be safe. I left to give her a chance at normal. At quiet. At not being a target. I don't hate you. I loved you once, but love wasn't enough against fear. If you're here now, be careful with her heart. She's brave, but she's fragile. She's already lost so much. Don't let her lose you too." Elena. Vinny read it twice, then a third time. When he looked up, tears stood in his eyes, silent, unashamed. Sarah watched him. "I kept it from you," she said, "because I was afraid too. Afraid you'd take her. Afraid you'd bring your world into ours. I thought silence was safer." The betrayal struck like a blade, clean, deep, unexpected. Vinny's hand shook as he folded the letter. "You knew," he whispered, "all this time. You knew she was mine." Sarah nodded once. Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I'm sorry. I was wrong. I see that now." The room spun for him, violent vertigo. Guilt crashed against fury, remorse against betrayal. He had lost 9 years. 9 years of her first steps, her first words, her nightmares, her hunger. 9 years Sarah had carried alone, because she had chosen silence over trust. He turned away, bracing both hands on the kitchen counter. His shoulders shook once hard. Behind him, small footsteps. Lily stood in the hallway doorway, eyes wide. She had heard. "Dad." Her voice cracked small, terrified. Vinny turned. The sight of her thin arms wrapped around herself, eyes filling, shattered whatever remained of his control. He crossed the room in 3 strides and knelt. "I'm here," he said hoarsely. "I'm still here." Lily's lip trembled. "Aunt Sarah knew, and she didn't tell you." Sarah stepped forward. Baby-eye Lily looked at her. Aunt, shock, confusion, hurt, colliding in her expression. You let me think he didn't want me. All those nights I cried because I didn't have a dad. You knew." Sarah sank to her knees. "I thought I was protecting you." Lily's tears spilled. "You lied." The word hung sharp wounding. Vinny pulled Lily into his arms. She clung to him, desperate, shaking. "I'm sorry," he whispered into her hair. "I'm so sorry I wasn't here sooner." Lily pressed her face against his chest. "Don't go away again." "Never," he vowed. "Never." Sarah wept quietly. "Forgive me, Lily, please." Lily looked at her aunt over Vinny's shoulder. For a long moment, silence stretched painful taut. Then Lily reached out one small hand. Sarah took it, their fingers laced, shaking uncertain, then steadying. "I forgive you," Lily whispered. "But don't lie again." Sarah nodded, tears streaming. "Never again." Vinny held them, both his daughter, his sister-in-law, the family he had almost lost twice. The tearing inside him reached a new searing depth, betrayal and forgiveness, colliding guilt and love, warring remorse and redemption burning side by side. He had been robbed of years. He had been given this moment instead. And in this moment, three people kneeling on a warm rug in a safe apartment, holding on to each other, he understood that healing was not the absence of pain. It was choosing to stay through it. Later that evening, after Sarah had gone to lie down and Lily had fallen asleep against Vinny's chest on the couch, Mia slipped into the room. She had been quiet all day, watching, weighing. She stood in the doorway, arms folded. Vinny looked up. Mia's voice was small but steady. "You didn't run, even after Aunt Sarah told you the truth." "I couldn't," he said simply. Mia nodded once, slow, deliberate. "Okay." She crossed the room, climbed onto the couch beside him, and leaned against his shoulder, tentative at first, then fully. Vinny wrapped his good arm around her. No words passed between them, but the silence said everything. Trust hard-won, fiercely guarded, had finally cracked open. And in that quiet, condensed stillness, Vinny Rossi felt the first true stitches take hold in the wound that had torn him open for so long. Not healed, but held. And that was enough. November 2025 settled over Chicago with the first true snow of the season, soft flakes drifting past the tall windows of the Northside apartment like silent promises. The building remained secure. The streets outside watched day and night, yet the family inside had begun to breathe more easily. The arson case had finally yielded arrests, the tall man and two accomplices taken into custody after a traffic stop revealed accelerant residue in their vehicle. Vinny's people had provided the quiet tip that tipped the scales. No fanfare, no retaliation, only justice delivered through the system he had once scorned. The apartment now carried the small, everyday sounds of life rebuilding itself. Sarah humming while she prepared dinner. Mia practicing violin scales in her room. Lily's laughter ringing when Vinny read aloud from one of the storybooks he brought home each evening. He had legally adopted Lily the week before in a private courtroom with only Sarah, Mia, and a kind judge present. The paperwork bore his signature beside hers, the ink still dark and fresh. When the judge pronounced the words, "Father and daughter Lily," had climbed into his lap right there on the bench and buried her face against his chest. He had held her until the tears stopped, his own eyes wet the room, so quiet the clerk could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Tonight the snow fell thicker. Vinny stood on the balcony, coat open, despite the cold, watching the flakes catch in the streetlights below. Lily appeared beside him in her thick socks and oversized sweater, one of his old cashmere ones she had claimed as her own. She slipped her hand into his without a word. They stood in silence for a long time. Finally she spoke, voice soft and thoughtful. "Dad, do you ever miss the old life, the big office, the fancy cars, all the people who were afraid of you?" Vinny looked down at her. Snowflakes had caught in her eyelashes. "Sometimes I miss the control," he admitted, "but I don't miss the emptiness. I don't miss waking up every day wondering who would try to take what I had. I don't miss being alone in a room full of people who wanted something from me." Lily leaned her head against his arm. "I used to think rich people were happy because they had everything. But you were sad. Even when you gave us the money that first day, your eyes looked lonely." The observation pierced him clean, accurate, devastating in its simplicity. He had spent decades convincing himself that wealth insulated him from pain. Instead, it had insulated him from love. He knelt so they were eye to eye. "You changed that, Lily. You and Mia and Sarah. You reminded me that the only things worth protecting aren't buildings or bank accounts. They're people. They're mornings like this one, quiet, ordinary, safe." Lily's lip trembled. "I was so scared you wouldn't stay." "I was scared too," he said. "Scared I didn't deserve to stay. Scared my past would follow me and hurt you again. But every time I look at you, I remember why I have to keep trying. Because you deserve a dad who shows up. Every single day." She threw her arms around his neck. He lifted her light as ever, though she had already gained a little weight, and held her against his chest while the snow fell around them. The cold bit at his skin, but he felt only warmth. Inside, Sarah and Mia watched from the doorway. Mia leaned against the frame, arms folded, but her expression had softened into something close to peace. Sarah wiped her eyes with the corner of her apron. Later after dinner, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, the kind of meal Lily once only saw on television, Vinny gathered them in the living room. A small fire crackled in the gas fireplace. He had brought one last gift tonight, 3 framed photographs. The first showed Elena young, smiling, holding newborn Lily in the hospital. The second showed the 4 of them, Vinny, Lily, Sarah, Mia, taken 2 weeks earlier at the park, all laughing as snow dusted their coats. The third was simple, Vinny and Lily on the balcony, her hand in his, the city lights behind them. He hung them on the wall above the couch. "This is us," he said quietly. "Not where we came from, not what we lost. Just us, right now." Lily touched the frame of the photo with her mother. "She'd be happy," she whispered. Vinny nodded. "I think so too." Mia spoke from the corner of the couch. "You really changed everything. For all of us." Vinny looked at her. "You changed me first. That night you sat on the couch beside me and didn't run away. That was when I knew I wasn't alone anymore." Mia's eyes filled. She crossed the room and hugged him, quick, fierce, then stepped back, cheeks pink. Sarah smiled through tears. "We're a family. A strange one, maybe, but a real one." Vinny looked at each of them, his daughter, her aunt, her best friend, and felt the last jagged edges inside him begin to smooth. The remorse would always be there, a quiet ache. The guilt would linger in the corners of his heart. But love had grown larger, fiercer, more stubborn, and it had begun to fill the spaces the pain once occupied. Outside, the snow continued to fall, soft, steady, covering the city in white silence. Inside, 4 people sat together on the couch, blankets shared voices, low hearts, finally beginning to heal. And in that quiet, condensed stillness, Vinny Rossi understood the deepest knowledge of all, that true strength is not in power over others, but in the courage to protect the vulnerable. That the greatest lesson life offers is compassion when the world expects cruelty. That education of the heart begins the moment we choose to see another person's suffering as our own responsibility. That another vital lesson is forgiveness, both given and received. That knowledge of our own flaws makes us kinder, not weaker. That real education comes from listening to the smallest voices in the darkest corners. That one more lesson is patience, because healing cannot be rushed. That knowledge grows when we share what we have instead of hoarding it. That the truest lesson is love unconditional, fierce regardless of skin color, bank balance, or past mistakes. That education of the soul happens when we choose humanity over fear. And that the final quiet knowledge is this: wealth and poverty can never separate compassion when 2 hearts decide to meet in the middle. To everyone watching this video, the Creator wishes you abundant good health, a joyful life filled with small daily miracles, and deep lasting peace in your heart every single day. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone you love or someone you wish you could help, please smash that like button, hit subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear that love always wins in the end. Your support means we can keep bringing these heartfelt stories to you every single day. In the comments below, tell me, how did this story make you feel? Does it connect to something real in your own life? Have you ever been the one who was invisible, or the one who finally saw someone who was? Share whatever is in your heart. The Creator reads every single comment and treasures the emotions you pour out. Thank you for being here. Thank you for letting these characters into your heart. Goodbye for now, and I promise I'll see you again in the next video. Disclaimer: all stories on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.